I know not whether laws be right or whether laws be wrong. All that we know who lie in jail is that the walls are strong, and that each day is like a year whose days are long. The words of Oscar Wilde. My name is George White. I presently call the road home. I've got an anniversary in a couple of days on July 2nd. Another anniversary of a beginning and an ending on this journey. 21 years ago, on July 2nd, I set foot for the first time into a jail. Now, 16 months prior to that, I had been a yuppie, if you can be that, in southeast Alabama. I'm the product of a Southern Baptist daddy from Spartanburg, South Carolina, and an Irish Roman Catholic mother from Brooklyn, New York. I grew up on a surfboard in Southern California. I spent a couple of years involuntarily in the United States Army when I missed a few classes in the start of a semester many, many years ago. When I got out of the service, I started to hitchhike back to California. You could still do that back in those years. And I got down into Central Florida. I was geographically challenged. I didn't know that from Fort Benning, Georgia to California was due west. I had an older half-brother that lived in Central Florida, and I planned on visiting him there for a couple of weeks. And after I'd been there a couple of 3 days, I was in my, what I refer to as my single, young, and stupid years. There was a young fellow that worked with my brother by the name of Bobby Jamie, and about my age, and I asked Bobby one evening, I said, aren't there some young ladies here in town you could introduce me to? We were over at his apartment, and he reached over and he grabbed onto a book and he handed it to me. It turned out to be his high school yearbook, and I opened it and started to turn the pages. And I said her. Her name was Charlene. I called her Char. We were married 6 months later. 15 and a half years later, we were living our little piece of the American dream in Enterprise, Alabama. I was vice president and general manager of this independent chain of building supply stores. Char and I had 2 small children. Our son Tom was 12 and daughter Christy 5. Enterprise was a small community of about 20,000, and our headquarters was adjacent to the store there in Enterprise. I was a Little League coach, PTA president, and I taught Sunday school on Sundays occasionally. I attended church most every Sunday. I was a good Christian on Sundays. Now, during the rest of the week, I did my share of lying, cheating, and stealing in a business way, please understand. I was a yuppie, I guess. But about 5:30 that evening, 16 months before July 2nd, 1986, on February 27, 1985, I had just gotten in from the office. It was about 5:15, 5:30. And the kids were going to spend the night with their grandmother, and Char had suggested that we go out and have dinner and catch a movie. Had only been there just a few minutes, and the phone rang, and I picked up the phone, and there was a man on the other end and asked if I was the Mr. White from Townsend Building Supply, and I said I was. Then he apologized for calling him at the house, said he had kind of an emergency situation. They had a circuit breaker go out, and could I help him out? And to be perfectly honest, I probably mumbled under my breath, but I then said, well, sure. Tell you what, I'll meet you out at the store in 15 or 20 minutes. And when I hung up the phone, I told Char, and she said, well, why don't I go out there with you? And then maybe we won't get caught up too long. She knew me well. I mean, think about it, folks. Southern Baptist, charming, smooth-talking daddy. Storytelling tradition. Irish Catholic tradition. Storytelling tradition. I can't put anything in 25 words or less when 10,000 will do. However, I will try tonight, once again. We got in the car, we went out to the store. There wasn't anybody there yet. We went on inside. We were there maybe 5 minutes when there was a knock at the door, and I went to that door expecting a grateful customer. Instead, we were confronted by a man with a gun. We cooperated, opened the safe, gave him what was there, gave him my wallet. Then he told us to go out there, and he gestured out to the showroom area where the cash registers were. Of course, I knew there wasn't money in the registers, but he had the gun. As we started out of the office, Shar was beside me. He was a little bit behind. We were all moving. As we approached the door, I started to push it, and I turned to look to see which way he wanted us to go. And Shar stumbled. And the first shot was fired. And again, and again, and again, and again, and again. My next conscious thought, I was lying on the ground, and it was quiet, and he was gone, and I hurt. I'd been shot 3 times, left arm, right leg, and here in the abdomen. And then I saw Shar lying, face down, in a pool of blood, a large pool of blood. I got to my feet, I got the phone, I called for help. And then she coughed, and I went to her. And I got down, there was a Coke machine, there was some plastic on it. I grabbed onto that plastic and got on the floor beside her. And I lifted her head. And then I saw her face. To this instant, I retreat from that next image that is forevermore seared into my memory. It was for me the absolute confirmation that life is sometimes empty of all reason, and there are things beyond my capacity to endure. I don't know if my scream was out loud or not, but literally I cursed my God. And to this day, I cannot remember if I said goodbye. So I died in my arms. For Tom and Christy and I, that was just the beginning of the nightmare. Because on July 21st, July 2nd, 1986, 16 months later, kids were with their grandmother. When the police came and surrounded my house and arrested me and charged me with the capital murder of my wife, I couldn't believe it. And so I stepped, or was escorted, if you will, in handcuffs into this jail in Coffee County, Alabama, in Elba. Small jail, 2-story. I remember walking up those stairs after they had taken the handcuffs off, and I had to change from my street clothes, if you will, into the jail uniform, which there in that poor county were leftover, used up whites, state uniforms from the Department of Corrections in Alabama that were too torn and too used up. Donated to the jail, that's what we wore. I went up those steps, and I went up, and believe me, I may appear to be at this point a reasonably intelligent human being, but at that point I was in a state of what I guess was temporary insanity for a long time. And when I got to the top of those steps, there was a steel door there, and they opened the door and they pushed me in. 18 feet by 27 feet. There were 3 cells, open doors. I later found out that they had been originally single-man cells, but now there was 2 bunk beds in each cell. And there was a block wall behind me, and there were bars, almost like a cage, like at a zoo. And there was a walkway just beyond that went around the perimeter of the building.